How would I fix inflation?
Yes.
Well, there is one common thread that has run through the world since 1900, and that is oil. The world runs on oil. It doesn't run on renewables, green energy.
You can shove your climate crisis up your You can shove your climate crisis up your You can shove your climate crisis. You can shove your climate crisis. You can shove your climate crisis up your
It doesn't run on solar power. It doesn't run on wind power. Ships used to run on wind power. They don't run on wind power anymore. They went to fossil fuels, coal. Now they don't go on coal anymore. They go on oil or natural gas, or they're trying to get to hydrogen. But fossil fuels are where it's at. Fossil fuels produce the electricity. You buy that electric vehicle is going to get its energy most likely from fossil fuel or nuclear power. But nuclear power is not that large a percentage. So when you raise the price of fossil fuel, everything is affected, because everything, mining requires fossil fuel, farming requires fossil fuel, transportation, manufacturing, fabrication, heating your house, everything you have uses fossil fuel. People talk about the supply chain. The supply chain starts with the raw materials and how you fabricate them and how you transport them. Fossil fuels there every step of the way.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
So when our great superior leader, Biden came in, the first thing he did was, I'm going to cancel the pipeline. He shut down the pipeline, and then he began to cancel oil leases.
Number one, no more subsidies for fossil fuel industry, no more drilling on federal lands, no more drilling, including offshore, no ability for the oil industry to continue to drill, period. Ends.
And what happened? We were, at the time that he came in, an exporter of oil. We had enough oil, we were now export. Now we import, and we're going around begging dictators to produce oil. So the single most important thing to halting inflation is to reduce the price of oil. Let me reflect back to the 70s. When the 70s started, oil cost $5 a barrel. By the end of the 70s, oil was $12 a barrel, $15. That was a major contributor to inflation in the 70s. Today, when Trump was in office, oil was down to $25 a barrel, actually. He raised it up to $40 a barrel, and the reason he did that was the oil companies were not going to produce any oil at $25 a barrel because they couldn't make a profit. And nobody runs a business as a benevolent operation. They want to make a profit.
Your company is in dire straits. Sales are down 50% due to stiff price competition. Dividends are falling. Your stockholders are demanding that you step down as chairman of the board. Now, here's your problem.
Operation. They want to make a profit. Their shareholders want a profit. At $40 with fracking, the oil companies could make a profit. But now oil is $125, and they're talking about $175 oil. That's where the inflation is coming, is oil. Pure and simple, oil. So Biden says he doesn't have a switch that he can throw. Yes, he does. He can turn on the oil industry and say, produce oil.
It's raining oil! It's raining oil, fellas!
If you remember, there's an old axiom that the Democrats started back when Obama came in. Rahm Emanuel was his chief of staff. And Rahm famously said, never let a crisis go to waste.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste. And what I mean by that, it's an opportunity to do things that you think you could not do before.
And Biden is not letting this crisis go to waste. He's using the crisis that he created. COVID started it a little bit, but he accentuated it. So he's using this inflation and the high price of oil to force renewables and green energy on everything. Green energy has to be subsidized. It doesn't stand on its own.
My dear mother used to have an expression, out of everything lousy, something good will happen if you look hard enough for it. Mm-hmm. We have a chance here to make a fundamental turn toward renewable energy, electric vehicles, and not just electric vehicles, but across the board. And that's something we should be.
And so you have to spend money for renewable. You could stop the whole business right now He can bring the renewables in over time, but he's trying to do it in a short period of time. So if he would just simply turn on the spigot and produce the oil, we would solve most of the problems. Now, 1/3 of the problem, that's 2/3 of the, 1/3 of the problem is the other type of energy, and that's people energy.
How do I know if it's my energy or if it's their energy? Or, you know, in one of the videos I did in the past, I talked about just let that energy go, return to sender. You don't need to take on other people's energy. But this can get confusing.
During COVID, we lost people energy. Factories were shutting down because people couldn't go to work, so you didn't have people energy there to do it. Said, we'll shut down for 3 weeks, and then all the medical people, your favorite Dr. Fauci and NIH and those people, all came out and said, no, we can't put people back to work. And so the 3-week shutdown became 3 months, became a year, and if Biden had his way, we'd still be shut down. So you shut down, you don't have people in the workforce, that energy is gone. So you've got fuel energy and you've got people energy. People energy has not returned. They keep talking about the unemployment, but that's how they define unemployment. You have to look at the number of people that are in the workforce that should be in the workforce, the percentage of employable people that are in the workforce. If you quit looking for work, they quit counting you, even if you should be out there working. So figures don't lie, liars figure.
How do you explain that?
The reasons for doing something like that would be, oh, losing you there. Hold on.
And really that's what they do with statistics, is they just make up all kinds of stuff. So we need fuel energy and we need people energy. But as long as they continue to pay people not to work, people aren't going to work. If they can make as much money sitting home as they could by working, they wouldn't. So you don't have people showing up to work, but people want to run their business. So they say, I'll give you this much more money if you come back to work. And they keep putting money on the table and eventually they come back to work. Well, putting all that money on the table raises wages. So now you've got the fuel energy going up and you got the people energy going up in cost. So you have two things contributing to inflation: the cost of fuel to make things happen and people who make these things happen. If both of those go up, inflation goes up. So he does have a switch. He can switch off, he can switch on the oil, and he can reduce the benefit increase.
But the idea we're going to be able to, click a switch, bring down the cost of gasoline is not likely in the near term, nor is it with regard to food.
For example, he's getting ready to cancel student loans. Some of those young people who were faced with paying their student loans, they'll say, I'll just take a part-time job. I don't need to pay off that student loan. And besides, right now I'm having so much fun, so I won't go back to work full time. So now you've lost more energy. Everything that man does, he does it 180 out from what he should. It's almost like he plans on doing it. Can you come back again? Never let a crisis go. Okay, there you go. Stimulate any questions?
Oh, always. So you think it's down to oil and little to do with printing money, even though we printed more money in the last...
Well, sure, you printed the money. That has a lot to do with it. But the printing of money was a foolish thing to do. Now, how do you get rid of the money? There is a way to do it. It was extremely painful in the early 80s. Volcker, who was head of the Fed, and Reagan did not stop him or do anything, fire him or anything. He renominated and kept him in. They raised the interest rates and they shut down the economy.
Yeah.
And when you shut down the economy, you get into a little bit of a recession, but you squeeze down the price of everything. Ultimately, inflation is supply and demand.
Right.
And the money is the demand. And so they had to squeeze the demand out of it by taking money away from people. And that's what they did with the high interest rates. They took away the money that people could borrow. So the money could sit in the bank, but nobody was getting the money because they couldn't borrow the money, couldn't afford to borrow the money. So the money supply was choked down with high interest rates. And that's precisely what the Fed is talking about doing now, is increasing the interest rates. But they're doing it piecemeal. Volcker pulled out a powerful swift stick, and he did it very quickly.
Last couple hours, the Federal Reserve announcing the largest interest rate hike in 2 decades as it tries to battle rising inflation.
It was a shock. It cost Reagan the Senate because of the shock of the economy, but he was willing to do it. And after the shock was over, Reagan reduced taxes, and we started the biggest boom in our economy uninterrupted for 15 years. All of that boom that Clinton claimed in the 90s was a result of the tax reduction in the mid-80s because it stimulated growth. When Reagan did that, he increased the tax revenue. Tax revenue went up when taxes went down. Kennedy did that in 1961. He had a big tax cut and revenue went up. Reagan had a big tax cut and revenue went up. When Trump's big tax cut occurred, revenue went up. Okay.
So, and you feel like a recession is inevitable, probably 2023, people are talking about? Or do you think...
they're going to try to do everything they can to keep it from happening before the elections in November. That's why he's draining the oil reserve, trying to keep the price of oil down. He realizes, it doesn't take a genius to see that the price of oil is at the heart of everything you make and do. And he knows that. But he doesn't want to produce more oil, but he knows we need the oil, so he's draining the reserve. Reserve, incidentally, that Trump filled up with $25 a barrel oil. So he's selling the oil, but he's not selling it in America. He's selling it overseas because it can get a bigger price. So he's selling the oil overseas. Another problem, even if we turn the spigot on because of the regulations, our refineries, we haven't built a refinery in 50 years.
Right.
Our refineries are not efficient.
Well, because of they're pushing them to go green the whole time, so why would those companies stay in the same field? Kind of makes sense.
They are on the sideline. Exxon has got a big green energy operation going, so does BP and all of that. But they would still like to keep pumping oil because that's good money. Look at the jobs that they're creating. People talk about the green energy as if that it's free on the environment.
No.
It takes a huge amount of fossil fuel
and slave labor
to build these things that create the green energy.
Right.
And these things do not last that long. And the big turbine blades onto the wind machines are not recyclable.
And they're killing birds.
Well, yeah, they are killing birds, but they have to be disposed of. They don't look that big in the pictures, but when you walk up next to one and stand and look at it, and then look at some poor sucker who's up there repairing it or working onto the blade out there trying to hold on for dear life.
Yeah.
Those things, and the solar panels, they require huge, huge areas. And you've got to take that land out of cultivation or production or trees. Incidentally, trees are the greatest sink of carbon dioxide we have.
Yeah.
All that wood that you burn, and they say you can't burn wood because it releases CO2. Well, yeah, that CO2 came from the air. So, it's just recycling. It's nature's way of maintaining a balance. So you put these solar panels all over the place. Now, you put solar panels out, but you can't put them in the middle of a city. You got to have them in a big wide area. So now you got to put power lines to collect the power. And same thing with the windmills. It takes 3 acres per windmill. That's a lot of land that you're taking out of useful production.
That is one big pile of shit.
And it's ugly. So you think like if Biden I know he just canceled a lot of leases in Alaska. You think if he just allowed the oil companies to produce oil and open up pipelines and stuff like that, they would start doing it as opposed to keeping the price high?
Sure.
Because people on the left in podcasts will say, no, this is the oil companies that want the prices high because they're making loads of money right now.
Well, so it's called supply and demand.
Right.
If you have enough supply to meet the demand, prices stabilize. If you have more supply than you have demand, prices go down. Right now, we have a demand. It's, again, one of Friedman's great expressions was too much money chasing too few products. Inflation is always, he did say inflation was always a monetary issue because it was always too much money chasing too few goods.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just taking it and going a little bit more detail into it. If you don't have enough goods and you got too much money, well, what's the most important good out there? Well, that's oil right now. That's the most important thing. If you don't have oil, you don't have farming. Look at fertilizer. Food prices are going up.
Right.
Farmers can't get fertilizer. Crops cut in half. In Thailand, let me give you an example. In Thailand their major crop is rice. They have very few large rice producing farms. Most of what they have are small plots run by small farmers. Small farmers do not have a big bank account that they can afford to say, I'm going to plant now because next year prices will go up, but big companies can't. We have big agribusiness in America. We have a lot more give and take on prices, but countries like India and countries like Thailand, India's probably the largest producer. They're not going to export their rice because they're now worried about whether they're going to run out of rice because the price of fertilizer. And it's fertilizer. Well, but fertilizer, the principal ingredient is oil, fossil fuel. Russia is the biggest supplier of fertilizer in the world. Well, they're not going to supply fertilizer to all these countries that are helping Ukraine fight them. That's why India is bowed down and is now becoming one of Russia's biggest buyers of oil and says Russia's a good guy and all of that. Because, when it comes right down to it, countries don't have friends. They have interests.
I must break you.
Right.
Self-interest. And India's got self-interest. The European countries, they unfoolishly went ahead with the pipeline over there that Trump was telling them, don't sign up for that pipeline.
Nord Stream 2?
Nord Stream 2, don't do it. And they went ahead and did it. And you can see the problem we have now because you can't have a country without oil. You can't have a modern country. And they don't have much of a source. Germany is going back to using coal again.
I saw that. It's
a lot of
hilarious.
Their green renewable stuff is not very efficient. It had to be subsidized. So, they were not letting a crisis go to waste. They were putting renewables in and all of that. But they had the oil and the natural gas. Natural gas is a fossil fuel. Natural gas is very, very clean. You can run cars on natural. You get better mileage and they're clean. You can convert cars to natural gas for a lot less than you can build an EV.
Yeah, I see buses around me that are powered by natural gas. So you feel like it's mainly energy crisis and
people and fuel.
And I've been saying they're doing it on purpose because they have some kind of ESG score.
Never let a crisis go to waste.
Right. Anytime they can create an emergency, they can thus create an emergency order.
That's the game plan. Sure, we can do it right now. It's like the magician. He's doing the trick with the left hand, and he's distracting you with the right hand.
So what is it going to take to fix inflation that's caused by the government? What it's going to take is you and me going through lots of financial pain. My encouragement to you is to prepare yourself as best as you possibly can, and don't be like a lot of people I know and just put your head in the sand and say, I'll just deal with it when it comes because it's just too much for me to handle right now. Prepare yourself, get ready, look to people who have been through inflation before in their lives, because I think that's most important to hear what they had to do or what they would have done differently like I've done on this podcast. So talk to people, tell other people about it, and prepare for inflation as it continues to go higher and recession is looming, as they pretend like it's just transitory. And just a month ago, they were making comments of saying recession will never happen. Now they're starting to talk about it. It's always how it starts, right? They don't want to freak you out like I'm doing right now, but they want to just ease you into it so you don't have a freak out session, because as leaders do, they want to keep the plebes calm and collective, because last thing you want is a bunch of people running out and getting toilet paper. So prepare yourself, get ready. I appreciate you guys so much for listening to my podcast. Please tell your friends and family about the Derek O'Shea Show. Let everyone know. If you want to support me, you go to buymeacoffee.com/Derek O'Shea Show. I'd greatly appreciate it. Link is in the description below. Tell your friends and family about that. Like this video, share this video, and subscribe if you're new. I appreciate you guys so much. Have a great day. I love you. Bye.